And they were shocked at the increase in the mycorrhiza in such a short amount of time. So I'm not making any claims, but you know, the results were in the soil tests. So again, Barry, what is it? For turf, it's endomycorrhiza?
Yeah. I do want to point out, Mike and I worked together on a project in Philadelphia. Drexel University did a pretty substantial planting, and they removed all the soil and put structured engineered soil in. And so we went in and got the contractor to do compost tea applications because there's basically no live biology. It was organic matter, but it wasn't live. We did do a soil test before in the spring. We're going to do another one to see what kind of difference it is.
Good. Did you ever get those results back yet for your soil tests?
The first one, yeah.
What's that?
Did I show that to you?
No. I'll have to check that out. Barry was touching on a little bit before, the fungi to bacteria ratio. For turf, it's about equal amounts, 3/4 to 1. You know, but the bacteria and the fungi want to be about the same. So when I'm brewing, you know, and I'm using good compost, there is fungi and there's bacteria in there, and depending on what kinds of foods that I use, I can build a tea that's better for shrubs or better for turf, or both, you know. When I'm doing turf as a food, I'll use organic blackstrap molasses is a great sugar for the bacteria to grow. And for the fungi, I'll use fish hydrolysate. Does anybody know what that is, fish hydrolysate? Fish emulsion was sold, right, in the old days of garden centers. And fish emulsion is fish, and they grind it up. They take all the precious oils, use them for vitamins, and what was left they would sell to the garden centers as fish emulsion, and sold it as like a food. But the hydrolysate is actually the whole fish. I mean, you know, I buy it in 50-gallon drums. It's pretty reasonable, and it's a great food source for the fungi. Also, another little trick, just before I'm getting ready to brew my tea, about a week before I'll go into my pile, I'll add some oatmeal to the pile. Oatmeal is a great fungal food, and it builds up that fungi. It's really easy to brew and grow bacteria. It's a lot harder to grow the fungi in the teas. So, you know, it just, and I think the better your compost, the better chance of you getting some good fungal activity in there. You could see those little bars. Did you see the hyphae before, and how, I might have some pictures later on that I can show you about that. Trees and plants like a fungal, well, trees like a fungal dominated tea. Vegetables are about the same as turf, about equal. Annuals like a little heavier, bacterial right back. And the only part of the soil food web Barry just didn't have the time to cover today, but this succession of plants as evolution takes place, it's unbelievable. And your bacteria plants or your weeds, like when I go into a turf and I see 1,000,000 weeds, other than compaction, I know that that soil is very bacterial dominated. So I try to get some good fungal tea on there. The weeds just are successionally like in a lower place on the evolution scale than your oak trees, you know. And as you take some of these classes, you'll get into that succession. It's really a cool concept. But you have to be aware of these relationships when you're working with this material. Some of the rates that I use for the compost tea, I use between, actually, that's not, I use 100 gallons an acre. That's an old slide. That's when they were mixing 3 to 4 parts water to the straight tea. On an athletic field, I'll use 200 gallons of water of tea. It'll be a 50-50 blend of the chlorinated water and my compost tea, but on the residentials, like I told you, I'm doing the straight tea. The compost tea is a liquid extract of high-quality compost. I think they say 100 gallons of tea, it has the same amount of biology as a yard of compost. So it doesn't have the organic matter, but it has the biology. That's a thing you want to remember. Trees love the fungal-dominated tea. Turf likes the even. Certification issue. There is really no certification on the quality of your tea. That's just why I encourage you to get the microscope. What I have is called the trinocular compound microscope. That's the model number. I mean, Barry can get a great one. We're not pushing products here, but if I didn't test that tea, I wouldn't have known if that was brown water or bad worm castings. I wouldn't have known anything, you know, and I would ethically be charging, you know, $4 a gallon for wastewater, you know. There is no bad tea unless it smells bad, you know. I mean, something's gone wrong. It's anaerobic, it's ammonia smelling or sulfur smelling, anything like that. Just you want to dump it in the woods. I mean, in your own property. I'm lucky. I have 2 acres of woods, my own woods behind my property, but I can experiment. So brewing, I start with a good aerobic compost. I told you I spent $400 for a yard of compost in a sack. It was delivered to my house. My worm castings were fresh. I found a source. I drive all the way up to Upper Connecticut for my worm castings now. And they're right out of the bin. They're like so fresh, it's unbelievable. One thing about my molasses, vendors sell a couple different kinds of molasses. I went back to using organic molasses. Even though any blackstrap unsulfured molasses will work, just you're looking for quality, so the couple extra dollars that a 5-gallon pail is, I just feel I'm back into quality, the quality of the ingredients, and ethically the best thing for your clients. The chlorine, the water is chlorine free. It doesn't smell. The containers are clean. I purposely brought a dirty. When you have your compost, you put it in a bag like this so that it doesn't clog all your sprayers up, and this is what you don't want your bag to look like all dirty like that. I clean things as if they're food grade and everything is spotless. They can get, if you don't clean right, you can get what's called the biofilm, and biofilm is bad. You do not want that biofilm. It can get into the corners. I'm sorry to walk in front of the screen, but it can get like down into these corners, down in here on your tubes, anywhere where there's like a 90-degree bend. So in organics, we always try to have just like tubing or flex tubing that can have a gentle curve, because the 45s, things are going to pinch and just collect this biofilm. I purchased this kind of, it's a bleach, but it's not a real bleach, some kind of commercial bleach they use in the food industry to help clean my tanks and my tubings. But I use just Simple Green a lot. Just, you know, it's safe, it's a green product, and it does a fine job cleaning up. But I clean after every batch, every brew. I clean before I spray, I clean after I spray. My wife is so pissed how much I spend on money on cleaning, but like, it has to be food grade. You know, the least little bit of biofilm and everything dies. So, and it's good for your operation to be clean and you know, people don't see these dirty tanks. They're crazy enough when you pull up. I have some pictures of my spray rigs. I mean, these vortex systems, they're just so different looking. You look crazy anyway, but at least they're clean. Crazy but clean. The brewer contains that compost bag like I showed you, and it has an air pump and an aeration system. When you're purchasing your compost tea brewer, the ease of cleaning is a huge thing. You want a brewer that is easy to clean. There's some of them out there that it's almost impossible. A lot of corners. Some of the systems are just round, and then they come down to like a vortex point, and all the hardware is on the outside. There's nothing internal, so you could just take a pressure washer and blow it out pretty quickly. But the ease of the cleaning when you're buying a system is a huge issue, and you need to talk to your vendor about that. You know, the foods we're going to talk a little bit more about, and the organism additions, I'll talk to you a little bit more about that as well, some things that you can add to your brews. This is my brewer, Brewing Tea right here. It's called the GOT system. It's 250 gallons. As you're brewing, and it's an aerobic process, you know, the tea itself bubbles in the tank. I'm not sure if that bubbling is occurring from the biology taking place or actually the foods being eaten, but it usually, when I don't see that bubbling and I know that the biology is not going to be too good. And in September, when my teas went bad, there was no foaming at all. But I'm not saying that it's a requirement for brewing in any way. It's just, in my experience, I found that is a good thing for the quality of my tea. The food bag hangs right down the middle. I should have a better picture of it. And then underneath in the tank, there's this, it's a stainless steel pipe, and then it tees off, and there's all air holes in it. And the air actually vortexes in the tank. Now, vortexing is another principle that's not mandatory in a brewing system, but vortexing goes back to the early grandfathers of organics. Was this biodynamic movement started by Rudolf Steiner in the 20s, and vortexing was a very important concept in their work, and it's carried over into our organics today.
Mike, can you explain what you mean by vortex?
It's the water circling in the tank, whether it's erupting out this way or as you stir water, it creates a vortex. So as you're stirring, if you were to stop, it would keep stirring. So it's created a vortex. In the biodynamics, you would actually vortex and then stop the water and vortex in another direction. You would do a double vortex. It seems the vortexing can actually change the molecular structure. I'm not making any claims with this, but it seems it can change the molecular structure of the water to enable it to pull up nutrients or biology a little bit better. That's the principle behind it. I don't know any studies that are proving that or disproving that, but that's the concept of vortexing. So I prefer a tank that has a good vortex to it. Okay, this is more about the process, the application itself. When I'm getting out to whether it's the turf or the plants or the trees, I spray the leaves, the top of the leaves. I spray around the roots, soy foliar feed and root feed as well. You can use a root probe to get down in there. That biology, if you have your pH right and your organic matter right, that biology is going to get down into the roots of the trees. It has not been proven whether deep root probing is any better or
Hey Mike, you
yeah.
did mention foliar application. Since it's organic, is there any chance of it burning the plant or bush, shrub, whatever?
I have never had it burn. I like to apply my teas on a rainy, misty day. The perfect time for me to do tea is like if it rained the night before, the sky's gray, and it's going to rain like a couple hours after you apply it. So it sits on the leaves for an hour or two, but then it's getting washed into the soils. I have sprayed tea in hot weather. You know, sometimes you just have to. If the hotter the weather, the bigger the droplet size that you can use, the better. Like you don't want to use a real fine spray with tea. If it's 100 out, you want to use large droplets. Let that lay on there. But I have not had a burning issue with tea.
I have heard of some instances, and they supposedly traced it back to when the tea wasn't properly made. It was anaerobic.
Yeah.
They have done some tissue damage with it.
Like I say, smell the tea. Now, if it smells bad, it is bad. You know, I learned that in my first class. If it smells bad, it is bad, and it's so true. Rotten eggs, right? There's something wrong with them. This bacteria and the fungi on the leaf surface, if you put a leaf under and amp that microscope up to 400x, you'll see that biology on there. It's unbelievable. A little bit more of the process, the application methods. You know, a sprayer, when I say a sprayer, I don't use backpack sprayers for compost tea. I'm not sure. I never looked at under the microscope at the biology after it came out of a backpack sprayer, but they say the nozzle openings and stuff are so small it might kill some of the biology. I use, what kind of pump is that, Barra, that I use? A diaphragm pump, right? Diaphragm, yeah, it's a diaphragm pump, like a Lesco sprayer.
There's different types, there's SE pumps, diaphragm pump.
You just don't want the tea running through the pump and the housing, you know. Again, you want like a diaphragm pump where it's just straight coming out. And just, you could use a garden hose and like a sub pump and just a ball valve, just a pipe with a valve on it to shoot it out. It doesn't have to be a fancy rig. I converted all my Lesco sprayers though over to these high output nozzles with by the nozzle size and the nozzles themselves, I adapted Lesco sprayers to work for my compost tea. I just made a lot bigger flood jet nozzles, you call them. You could go to a couple tree places up by us or look online. It's low pressure, high volume spraying. It's different than a tree rig, where that's low volume, high pressure spraying. So you want to put a lot of material out. The nozzle size, you know, 60 mesh, that's a 60 mesh bag, so there's 60 mesh nozzle openings. There's this nozzle out there called the Boominator, and it's a flood jet nozzle. It's the wildest thing, and I'll show you some pictures later, and it's just mounted. I just have it mounted to, did you see that 250-gallon tote that I was brewing my tea in? I just have this Boominator nozzle mounted to that 250-gallon tote, and it sprays 30 feet across. So I could do a football field in 10 minutes, feed it. I'll do the compost tea. And then I have an organic food that, it's like, you know, it's $3 and something a pound, 4 pounds does an acre, so I could feed an acre for 12 bucks. I put some molasses and fish in there so that the biology can eat that. And so I'm getting these prices down to match some of these chemical guys. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. I keep saying later. That JD 9C spray gun that you're used to, you know, with your traditional chemical spraying, just by the nozzle can be changed into a T-gun very easily. If you ever needed a hand with that, just give me an email and, you know, I'll set you up with some people that can customize your rigs for you. That's that Boominator flood jet nozzle. So I actually had this that thing does a football field in 10 minutes. It's dirty because my organic fertilizer is made from soy and it's a very dirty product, plus it's mixed with the humic acid. And I took that picture right after feeding, so the tank is dirty. We try to get that tank as clean as we can, but that's not as clean as my brew tanks can get. Just that's my fertilizer applicator tank. This is another thing that my custom guy who helps me with my nozzles. We found a pump that mounts to my 3-point hitch on my trailer, so I don't need a motor, and I just put that thing on there, put the tote on the back. We mounted pallet jacks onto my 3-point hitch, and I turned my backhoe, it's a light backhoe, into a mechanism that I can feed a football field in 10 minutes. And it's not, I had the stuff on my mason dump, but it was causing too much compaction, the weight of the truck, with 500 gallons of spray and the truck and everything else. So I went to the backhoe, and it's about a fraction of the weight. That's that 3-point hitch pump that I'm talking about. I think it was about 1,200 bucks. That's a regulator on the tank. The application timing. The time of day is not as important, like I say, if the droplet size is greater than 1 millimeter. If you're using those really fine mists, then you really want to be in the early morning or evening, not in a hot sunny day. I do prefer the morning or the evening for my tea spraying, but there's days when you have to do it in the middle of the day. Although I'm saying here, do not spray in the high heat midday. I don't recommend it. I like overcast days. You know, it's live biology and it's sitting on that leaf. If it's drying out, chances are it's not going to live and make it. So it's ideal when it's rained the evening before and the foliage is a little moist. I love spraying in a light misty rain. As soon as we're done with the application, I try to, especially on a soccer field, I'll go into the school and talk to them about putting their irrigation system on. And within an hour of the application, even 20 minutes after we're done applicating, I try to run like through the zones, 10 minutes a zone, just to get some water out and get that biology into the soil. A lot of people ask, will the chlorine in the town water kill the biology that you just sprayed out there in the field? And they're saying, this is what they're saying, I haven't seen any research either way, but once that water travels through the air out of an irrigation head, just as it's traveling through the air, a lot of the chlorine is being dissipated, or enough of the chlorine is being dissipated where it's not going to kill all the biology. I'm not making any claims about that, but you know, anybody I've talked to, the benefits of irrigating after an application far outweigh the chance that it's got a little bit of chlorine in the water. I don't like it to get dry after I apply. Personally, I never cut the tea by more than 50%. The water source, same consideration as brewing. I mix the humic acid powder, 1 tablespoon for 50 gallons of water. It really goes far as a dechlorinator. It does a great job. And again, I don't know, Michelle, if you were here, it seems to take the chloramine out of the water as well, the humic acid. Now I'm into that cleaning. And some of this might be on your exam, so pay attention. Cleaning the machine is just important. Treat it as food grade. You know, I use the Simple Green. It's an organic product, just said that. Some people use hydrogen peroxide cleaners because you see that brown that can get on there, and you know, sometimes I do have to blast it off with this. It's not bleach, it's like a restaurant grade bleach product that they use in the food industry, so that I eliminate the biofilm. That's the big thing. You don't want that film building up. That's what will kill the biology. Hidden surfaces are bad news. Any 45-degree angles, like I say, keep your bends gentle, much easier to clean, no sharp corners. That's why I use clear hoses, so I can see right in at my hoses. You got to replace them once in a while, but it's better to see right in there to see if they're dirty or not. Use white PVC, then you got the sharp corners and you can't see if it's clean, so you'll see a lot of clear hoses on my equipment. The temperature is huge when you're brewing tea. When I was brewing between 75 and 85 degrees, my teas were so active. It was so unbelievable. That was another thing. It started getting cool in September, and I was wondering if my teas slowed down because of the temperature, you know, and I put a heater in my water tanks, and it still wasn't that, so I knew it was something else. But the biology will grow much faster when it's warmer, and so that when it's warmer, your air is even more important. You really want to make sure you're keeping your hoses and your the openings in all your nozzles clean so that it's bubbling the proper way. When I brew and it's 75 to 80 degrees, I brew for 24 to 30 hours. September, October, November, when I was brewing, I upped my brewing time to about 36 hours, and the biology was still fine. It almost seemed like I needed that extra 10 or 12 hours to get really good active tea. And again, the only way to know is by looking under the scope. Yes?
Is there a temperature you don't want to go below when you brew?
I haven't found it. I mean, I brewed some tea. I was going to brew some tea for the class, and just the logistics are so hard. We're so far away. But last winter, I brewed some tea for a compost tea class, and it was not as good as the tea that I was brewing in the summer, but you could still see microorganisms. And Elaine Ingham taught us that under the snow in the middle of the winter in our area, in the temperate climates, there's more biology happening than anywhere in the whole world. Like in a compost pile in the Northeast, in the winter under the canopy of the snow is the more biology is going on than in a tropical rainforest. And I always found that hard to believe, but so I don't think that it hurts. I think different microorganisms brew out in the cold weather as compared to hot weather, but I'm not a scientist.
Typically soil temperatures, when you get below 50 degrees, things slow down. They certainly don't stop.
Oh, they slow down, yeah, but they don't stop.
And, you know, I've brewed at 50 degrees, and like Mike said before, it takes longer. It takes longer, but that's also, you know, that when I first started brewing, the requirements were to keep it between 68 and 75 degrees, And then they changed that to saying, well, you know, do it at ambient temperature, which are more likely to be encouraging the biology that's active in the soil at that time. So there's a lot of give and take. Like I said before, it's science and art.
One good thing with the cool weather is you'll never have to worry about your tea going anaerobic from a lack of oxygen. There's plenty of oxygen in the water. The heat burns up that oxygen pretty quickly, and you need to put a lot of air in there, you know. So, like I said, that bottom slide, no problem using up oxygen when it's cool. I mix less foods in my tea when I'm brewing in the cold weather. You just need a little bit less food.